Hi, I'm Beth Reese. I'm the founder of Yoginos Yoga for Youth and the host of the OHMazing Way podcast. And today, super amazing colleague and friend Jodi Smith is here with us today. Jodi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Beth?
I'm so great. It's always great when I'm with you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And so today we are going to talk about how what it's been for Jodi to find mindfulness and yoga in her life, how it has really transformed her life a bit, and how she's using it as this revolutionary practice to be with and transform the lives of young people, both here in Houston, and as she's created her own amazing kids yoga program, Mosaic Kids, how she's out to impact the lives of kids everywhere. So fantastic. So we're going to get started today, and we'll drop in and do a few breaths together, and then I'll share with you a bit more about Jodi before we dive into her story. So wherever you are, if you will, just really notice what it is you're doing. If you're sitting, really get that you're sitting. If you're standing, know that you're standing. If you're in line at the grocery store, really be with it. Doing the dishes, just really get it. If you're in a place where you can softly close your eyes or lower your gaze, that would be great. If that feels comfortable for you. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. And as we come to this space to really know that we're sitting or standing or driving or whatever it is, however we're being, and take a moment and notice your body sensations. Notice where your body is touching, whether that be the ground or a chair. Notice maybe where the clothing is resting on your body. And know that our body is really amazing and that it can tell us so much about the quality of how we're feeling and what we're thinking. So if we're starting to feel upset or if we're happy, we often can feel that in our body first. So as we've now connected a bit to our body, let's do 3 breaths together. If it's available to you, take a nice deep breath in through your nose. That helps filter the air. And maybe feel your belly grow big, and then your ribs and back body and chest expand. And let's exhale together with an ah. Ah. Let's take another breath in through our nose. Nice and expansive. Let your belly grow big like a birthday balloon. And as you exhale slowly, let your belly soften, your shoulders soften, your eyes and their sockets soften. One last breath in together. Breathing in and really feel your body just expand, enliven. And exhale, breathe out slowly. And as you're ready, softly flutter your eyes open. Oh my goodness, Jodi, I don't know about you, but that always just shoof, helps me really get grounded in this moment. How about you?
So I feel relaxed.
Awesome, awesome. Listeners, I hope you're feeling relaxed too. So I have known Jodi for many years, and I met Jodi through the Yoginos Yoga for Youth adult training program, and she came to a training a few years ago. And I remember she has, if you're watching, you can see this beautiful big magnetic smile, and her being when you're with her has that quality also. And so we met, and she actually had been, I think, about a year into your position of teaching at the school at that point.
Or in my year. I was in my first year.
Yes, yes, yes. And so then I didn't see her for a couple years. And then just recently this year, she's come like returned back into my life and me into hers. And it has just been a delight. And she is up to so many important transformative ways of being, both, as I mentioned earlier, teaching yoga full time at an urban elementary school, and then with her own kids yoga program, Mosaic Kids. And Jodi, I just love having you in my life and knowing that you are out there up to making big differences in the world.
Oh yeah. Do you remember the name of our group was the Disruptors during our my first training?
I love it. That's right. The disruptors. That's right. And that's really how I see you, really disrupting, for people, if things are going a certain way, to disrupt and really help them, really see and get their whole and completeness. So that's so
Yeah.
great. So I'm going to read a little bit about Jodi's background so you can get the full picture of her amazingness, and then we'll keep diving in from there. So Jodi has completed her 200-hour yoga training. So she also teaches yoga classes for Yoga Works and other studios. And she embarked on the journey to impact communities of color. She became a full-time children's yoga teacher in the KIPP Texas network. In this role, she's taught more than 1,400 yoga and mindfulness classes to more than 800 elementary school children while impacting an estimated 4,000 family members within the Houston area. Like, did you guys get that? Like thousands and thousands of people this amazing human being is impacting. As
That's
a
three
teacher,
zeros.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying that's four with three zeros.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Count them. As a teacher in Title I public schools, it was important for her to leverage the backgrounds and cultural experience of students to make her yoga classes engaging and relevant. Drawing from her work in culturally and social economic diverse social communities, Jodi created Mosaic Kids Yoga to promote academic, social, and emotional learning while championing diversity and inclusion. The work she does in the schools and with the communities of color reflects her personal interest in how the intersection between social justice, inclusion, and yoga can foster change in underserved communities. Now, no slacker, she also has an MBA from Duke University, and she's a lover of art, reading, and traveling. So also fantastic, and I so looking forward to touching on so many of these areas of interest that you have, Jodi. And how I really I'd love to hear a little bit about is, I think like me and like many of us, didn't grow up practicing mindfulness and yoga. And what was going on in your life when, or what happened when you decided that, or it was encouraged for you to take on practicing yoga? And how
Mhm.
has the practice changed your life, including into revolutionary ways?
Okay. Um, Interesting enough, the first time that I took a yoga class was when I was 4 with my mother, who was pregnant at the time, and we were watching PBS. Forget the name of the yoga teacher. She's like famous. That was my first introduction to yoga. And I just remember it being fun and cool that I could sit in lotus position, even though I didn't know what that was. I just knew it was different from the way my grandma wanted me to sit. So I just remember yoga being fun. And throughout the years, I had heard about yoga and I tried it because I wanted to be, a dancer and learn how to do splits so I could be on the pom pom squad. And I was like, oh, let me do this yoga thing. But it wasn't something that I looked to as a way to deal with any issues. It was just to help me get to an end, a goal of mine, which was a very physical. Um, I probably profess to be more of a gym rat. Like I love weights, I love being in the gym, and that's what I always did. I was very physical. But how yoga came in, I was still very much in the gym. And after I finished graduate school, I got a job working in Houston in education management. So I worked in HR, did a little bit of work in IT and HR work, but I was so stressed out. I mean, there's so many experiences that I had working in a large school district and in a new city where I didn't have family. I didn't have outlets. The only outlet I had was the gym. But unfortunately, I started to show a lot of odd symptoms. One was insomnia, chronic headaches, back pains, TMJ. I still have symptoms of that in my jaw, the popping, the tightness, crying spells. And I had experienced anxiety before, but never to this degree where physically it was manifesting. So doing my research, coming from that very analytical business side, I went to WebMD like most people and was like, oh, I'm depressed. And the only treatments that I zoomed in were medication. Anything else, I ignored. I went straight for, I think I need to be on some kind of medication because I have to function and do my work. So I went to my doctor and I explained to her what was happening. We ran a lot of tests to see if there was something physical going on. And nothing. She says, I ran every test I could. There's nothing physically. But emotionally, your brain and your body are telling you that you're stressed and you need help. And she says, I'm going to prescribe that you try yoga for a month. And I looked at her like, that makes no sense. And I'm not going to do it and my reason was because I work out, I lift weights, I run, I eat relatively well. Why should I do yoga? And she told me, she says, you associate anger with weights. It's that pushing, that throwing things, the ropes, this hitting. She says, when you're doing it, you are visualizing the people that are hurting you. So when you go into that situation, the gym represents anger. You have to balance that anger with something else. So we negotiated. She said a month, I said a day. She said 2 weeks, I said 1 week. Like we went back and forth till I said, okay, I'll give you 2 weeks. If it doesn't work, I want to be on a prescription now because I can't live like this. That is how I found yoga, but I do want to make a special shout out because she's still my doctor and it's been 7 years, that there are other options out there. And I'm not saying that medicine and prescriptions are bad, by no means. But if you can find a doctor that gives you alternatives, like consider yourself very lucky and blessed. And if you don't, please ask those questions. And that is a little pin to how yoga now has transformed me into a very more radical way of thinking about my healthcare.
I love it. I love it. I have a doctor who's an integrated doctor and kind of weaves Eastern and Western medicine. And she once, and I had her write it down on a prescription pad to like walk 30 minutes 3 times a week. And I was like, can you write me a prescription for that?
Right.
I can put on my fridge. So, right. But similar, it's, there is so much we can do getting back into our body in like kind of the idea of go slow to go fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think she was a consistent practitioner of yoga. And I don't know why, even till to this day. I mean, I've talked to her and I don't know why, like, I just feel like everything was in place. I don't know why I picked that doctor. I don't know why she prescribed that over anything else. I will say, like, after my second yoga class, and I took it with a teacher named Jill here in Houston, the second class, like, I knew. Like, I was doing a heart opener, just opening my arms, looking up at the ceiling, and I just started crying. That was the first time, like, I felt a release. I heard my mind get quiet. It was just suddenly like nothing. And I just looked up and I just said, God, you brought me here. I just knew it. I just knew it at that moment. And then a week later is when I knew I wanted to be a yoga teacher. Like I just had this, it was like this little girl confidence of like, how long do I need to practice before I can teach yoga to other people? Because I knew if this could help me, this could help other people. And the
Yes.
people who need it probably don't have access or information to it. And that was the moment when I knew this was my path going forward.
So beautiful. And one thing I want to underscore that I think your doctor understood, and of course, at this point you can Google it and find a lot of information for yourself. And I just want to say to listeners that there is so much research out there now about how the practice of yoga and mindfulness and meditation, the ways that, for example, a pose like child's pose or downward dog, where when your joints and your muscles are compressed, like getting like a bear hug, if you will, that has what occurs to your body physiologically as it helps calm down the nervous system. So it's one of the reasons it doesn't surprise me when you say, Jodi, after your second class, you were like, oh my gosh, there's something here. And in recent years, we have scientists have come to know that there is neuroplasticity, so that our brain can grow and change and we can develop more neurons. It used to be that it was like, nope, once you reach age 6, no more connections made. And now we know that there is the opportunity to continue to allow our brain to grow and to we practice things like yoga and mindfulness, that we build that brain's ability to access patience and calmness more readily. So there is absolute scientific background and grounding on this information. So I love that your doctor was aware of it and so skillfully prescribed it to you. And I also hear in your share how you knew so quickly that you wanted to do it, to teach it rather. And B, the awareness that there are many conversations today around the actual level of inclusivity and accessibility of yoga to people of diverse economic backgrounds, cultures, and it sounds like that's something you noticed quite quickly. Would you be willing to share with us your experiences about that?
Yeah. So when my doctor prescribed yoga, I didn't know where to go. So I probably did what most people do. We go on Groupon and try to find a deal somewhere. And I did. I bought, a Groupon deal, 30 days. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And it's a lovely studio, but there were a few things I noticed. I was the only person of color, and I was a beginner in an all levels class, and I felt completely lost. And, just to make a point, I'm very comfortable. I mean, I've lived in Europe. I've lived in almost every major city in the United States except Los Angeles and San Francisco. So I'm very comfortable with being in diverse communities. But at that point where I was in a very vulnerable state and in a state where I needed healing, walking into an environment where, all are welcome, but yet feeling like an outsider and not actually feeling welcomed, pushed me away. Like it did push me away. And I have to be honest, I didn't go back after a week. And I felt what I felt in my job. Unequipped, incompetent. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like I heard those voices that I had at my job that was causing the anxiety. I can't do this pose correctly. Nobody's helping. I need to figure it out. Nobody wants to talk to me. Like just all that chatter that someone who comes to a yoga class is already experiencing, walking in there and having it almost reinforced was just I won't say it was traumatic for me because I knew this ain't it. But for other people, it is. I've had students who come once and you don't see them for a year and you're like, where were you? And they're like, well, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel it was the right fit. It was too fast. I didn't feel like I was ready. So I understood that. And I always kept that experience as a tool for me to be aware.
Yeah, and I think so many of us feel, I mean, one of the things that we're, such a common human need is the sense of love and belonging. And
Yes.
so, and I think especially in the context of yoga, which is to connect, unite, that you go to a yoga class, and if it's a space that doesn't generate a sense of connection and belonging, it can feel, I think for some people, and this is what I've heard, and I've had similar experiences, it almost feels confusing, like you're in the wrong space altogether.
Right. Like this, I don't belong here. I'm sold I'm supposed to do yoga, but is this yoga? Because I'm not, and you just feel odd. And again, if you're suffering from a form of anxiety, like mine was very workplace driven. I mean, I'm just going to say it was workplace bullying and always feeling insecure about your ability. Going into a place like the wrong studio or having the wrong teacher who generally their intention is good. I have no blame on them, but for me, I'm very in touch with how I was feeling. I was like, I'm a fish out of water. I don't feel comfortable. So I did actively seek another studio. And this one I found was, it was ran by an African-American woman named Jill. It was smaller. I think the environment fit me too because it's very earthy, like hardwood floors and brick wall. Like it was just cool. She was playing drums. The feeling was very grounding for me. That was the first thing. It was very grounding. Music, just simple drums, meditative, quiet. And there were other people that looked like me and different body shapes. So if they weren't Black women or Black men, there are white women, Hispanic men, but we all represented differences, body sizes, height, ability. I mean, we had some super handstander, gravity floating yogis right next to beginners, and you didn't feel out of place because everything was adaptive.
Nice,
And that's when
nice.
I knew, okay, this is yoga. This is a community that I like. More people need to be here. And then that's when the business side of me is like, oh, I'm gonna be a yoga teacher. I'm gonna tell. But
Right. And then, so Jodi, so you are a yoga instructor for adults as
yes,
well as for kids. And, maybe for some of our yoga studio owners or people thinking about opening a studio, as well as people just, pondering in their life ways to think about what could be implicit bias and inclusion. What are, well, I guess maybe first we should define what implicit bias is. And then also I
okay.
wanted to ask, like, what do you do in your classes and practice to create that inclusive community? So maybe a place just to quickly say, because implicit bias is something that, we all have it. And so how would you define that?
Uh, in the most
You're
layman's,
welcome.
yeah, thanks. Only because I don't have my notes, but the way I look at implicit bias, first, we all have them. And they're a mind shortcut of making sense of the world. So it's taking all your past experiences and awarenesses and making kind of a snap judgment about a broad situation.
I
Mine,
love that
you know,
definition. Thank you.
welcome. Because I think in that perspective, people can start to accept, like, oh, yeah, I have some. Um, on a most simple level, it could be rivalry between schools. Oh, you went to that school. Everyone like at that school is like this. Or, oh, you went to Harvard. Or the way we just make those snap judgments. The problem is when people ignore that fact because they consider bias and they quickly go to, oh, I'm not a racist. No one said that. It's just our brains have to conserve energy. Our brains have to make decisions all the time. And that bias was, in a way, a method for our brain to just kind of take shortcuts. Shortcuts.
Right, for
But when
sure.
shortcuts undermine your ability to see people for who they are and adapt and make adjustments, differentiate, especially in schools, differentiate the learning to meet the needs of students, then we have a problem. You cannot operate on shortcuts.
Yeah, or I think also sometimes the implicit bias we could take um, as factual,
Mm-hmm.
or in that our as that thought is popping up, that's our opinion and it's fact. You know,
Right.
what my kids and I have a deal that we call each other out on our implicit biases when they show up. And so, I mean, a simple example, one day I was cooking breakfast for my son and I made a joke like, yeah, do you think many moms out there are cooking their kids breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately said, hello, implicit bias. And I was like, what? And he was like, you think dads can't cook breakfast? And it was just, I mean, that's a very simple one, but also just a point to, we can, as we learn to become aware, we can support each other in that awareness.
Yeah.
And his calling me out, well, we'd agreed to it, and it was in kindness and to help, you know, show me and help show me like what, you know, just these thoughts that exist.
Yeah.
So really great.
Yeah.
And what are maybe some ways that you find as a yoga teacher, and let's start here first with in your adult classes, that you seek to create inclusive environments, and then in the second half we'll go into more your work in the school.
Okay. So going back to my experience of coming in, the most simple thing you can do as a teacher is greet students. If you don't have the time, let them know that you acknowledge them. Eye contact, hello, a shake of a hand, a get to know people. I'm good at kind of reading people, and almost instantly I can tell who's new. So I try to start my class off with humor and lightness so people can let down their guards. I always, let me take that back. I don't always. Sometimes I do forget and I get called out for it. But when I do remember, I'm like, is there anyone new? And it's almost like being in church when nobody wants to stand up when they say, do we have any new members in church today? And nobody wants to stand up. I was that girl. Knowing that there is somebody new, I still give instructions. I still say, go at your own pace. I give the instructions that I wish someone would have gave me as a new student, that this is your practice, this is your mat. Listen to my voice and cues, but trust your body. And if something doesn't feel right, you have the right to back up. If you're tired, you can sit down. Like speaking to them without singling them out. Because again, yoga, this space of healing can be vulnerable, and I don't know their situation yet. So giving those instructions to allow that person to feel that I'm speaking to them without singling them out is one way that I open the door for them and invite them in. Another thing that I do, thank you, because I just feel like that's a missing element. Those little things are probably the most important ways, and that's before classes started.
Yeah, and what you're also pointing to, Jodi, is that, you know, listening to your body on every given day, because one day my body might feel quite energetic and maybe there's a certain level of a pose I can achieve, but another day, and your gracious welcome helps remind me to take care of how my body is showing up on any given day. So that's really lovely.
Well, you just remind me another thing, and I'll just give, like a few examples. When I know I have a student who is struggling. Balancing is where I see the struggles because they're trying to move up, let's say, into a half lotus tree pose. I will demo it with my foot on the ground and my right foot on my left ankle. And I stand tall and I demonstrate what I'm looking for. I want you to stand up tall, lift through your chest. And I also show my vulnerability and I say, as a teacher, my balance is off today. This is my tree pose. Giving that person permission to say, wait, I don't have to do tree in this very extreme way. I can do it like that and still get the benefits or more. So allowing myself to be vulnerable in front of my students, I don't have to show off. I don't. And that is not the place for a yoga teacher to do it. And I do want yoga teachers to understand that. Let your students see you vulnerable. That gives them courage to express themselves. Beautiful. And that's another way how I can just bring them in.
Yeah, really. And so I can also just imagine, of course, already, and I know how gracious you are and how that translates to the work that you do with young people and your students at the elementary school. So Jodi, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I'd love to hear some of the ways that you practice yoga off the mat with taking care of yourself, and yoga off the mat being ways that we take care of ourselves, others, and the earth. So we'll hear some practical tips for self-care, and then let's dive in about your work with young people. And of course, in the show notes, I'll give everybody tips and direct links to find you. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Thanks, everybody.